You don't belong in first class, and you certainly aren't getting on this plane." Those were the last words Patricia, a veteran gate agent, thought she'd ever say to two young black men in hoodies. She thought she was protecting her flight. She thought she had all the power. But she didn't know that the two men she just humiliated were holding the one thing that could save her dying airline, or destroy it. 10 minutes later, the screens went black, the planes were grounded, and Patricia realized she hadn't just denied 2 passengers. She had just cancelled the entire company. This is the story of the instant karma that shook an entire airport. The fluorescent lights of Chicago's O'Hare International Airport hummed with the manic energy of a Friday afternoon. Terminal 3 was a sea of rolling suitcases, exhausted parents, and business travelers shouting into their AirPods. But amidst the chaos, Caleb and Joshua Sterling moved with a synchronized calm that drew eyes. They were identical twins, 28 years old, standing 6'3", with broad shoulders that filled out their oversized, cream-colored hoodies. To the untrained eye, they looked like college athletes, or maybe rappers trying to keep a low profile. They wore distressed denim and limited-edition sneakers that cost more than most people's monthly rent. They didn't carry briefcases, just sleek, black leather backpacks slung casually over one shoulder. They approached Gate K12, where the sign flashed, AeroVantage Flight 404 to Zurich, boarding first class. Standing behind the podium was Patricia Gable. Patricia was 55, with a stiff bob of blonde hair that hadn't moved since 1998, and a uniform that was pressed within an inch of its life. She wore her golden lead agent wings like a sheriff's badge. She had been with AeroVantage for 30 years, and in her mind, this wasn't just a gate. It was her front porch, and she decided who was welcome. She watched the twins approach the priority lane. Her eyes narrowed behind her rimless glasses. She saw the hoodies. She saw the sneakers. She saw their skin. "Excuse me." Patricia's voice cut through the ambient noise, sharp and nasal. She stepped out from behind the podium, blocking the narrow lane with her body. "This lane is for first class, and Diamond Medallion members only. Economy boarding is in Zone 4, which hasn't been called yet. Please step aside." Caleb, the older twin by 4 minutes, stopped and offered a polite, tired smile. "We know, Mum. We're in first class." He reached into his pocket to retrieve his phone for the digital boarding pass. Patricia didn't even look at the phone. She let out a short, derisive huff. "I doubt that. Please move. You're blocking the walkway for our priority passengers." Behind the twins, a middle-aged man in a grey suit, clutching a leather briefcase, sighed loudly. "Come on, let's go," the man grumbled, checking his Rolex. "We have tickets," Joshua said, his voice deeper than Caleb's, stepping up beside his brother. He held his phone out, the screen brightness turned up to the max. It clearly displayed the AeroVantage logo, the name Joshua Sterling, and the seat number. 1A. Patricia glanced at it and immediately shook her head. "Screenshots can be faked. I see it all the time with you, with people trying to sneak upgrades for social media clout. Step out of the line. Now." "It's not a screenshot," Joshua said, his jaw tightening. He tapped the screen to refresh the QR code. "Scan it." "I am not scanning anything until you step aside and let the actual paying customers through," Patricia snapped. She gestured to the man in the grey suit behind them. "Mr. Henderson, please come right around. I apologize for the obstruction." She physically ushered the man in the suit past the twins. As Mr. Henderson squeezed by, he muttered, "Ridiculous," glaring at Caleb. Caleb took a deep breath. He exchanged a look with Joshua. It was a look they had shared 1,000 times growing up, a silent communication that said, "Keep your cool. Don't give them a reason." "Ma'am," Caleb said firmly but quietly, "we are paying customers. We paid full fare. We need to board. We have a meeting in Zurich tomorrow morning that we cannot miss." Patricia turned back to them, crossing her arms. Her name tag glinted under the lights. "Look, I don't know how you got those passes or whose credit card you used, but I'm flagging this reservation. You two don't fit the profile of our first-class cabin. We have a dress code." Joshua looked down at his $200 Fear of God hoodie and his $3,000 off-white Jordans. Then he looked at the man she had just let through, Mr. Henderson, who was wearing a wrinkled suit with a mustard stain on the lapel. "Dress code?" Joshua asked, raising an eyebrow. "I didn't see a dress code on the website when we bought the tickets." "Discretion of the gate agent," Patricia lied smoothly. A cruel smirk played on her lips. She was enjoying this. She liked the power of denying entry. It made her feel like the guardian of the elite, even if she barely made above minimum wage herself. "And my discretion says you look like trouble. We've had reports of disturbances, with passengers matching your description." "Matching our description?" Caleb stepped closer, his voice dropping an octave. "You mean black men?" "Don't you dare play the race card with me," Patricia hissed, her face flushing a blotchy red. "I am doing my job. You are being aggressive. One more word, and I'm calling security." The line behind them was growing. People were staring. Phones were coming out. A young woman with blue hair near the front of the economy line started recording. "Please call security," Caleb said, calling her bluff. "In fact, call the station manager. Call the GSC, Ground Security Coordinator. We'll wait." Patricia felt a spike of adrenaline. They weren't backing down. Usually, people scrambled away when she threatened security. These two stood their ground like statues. It infuriated her. "Fine," Patricia spat. She grabbed the corded phone on her podium. "You want to do this the hard way. You're not flying today. Not on AeroVantage." She punched a code into the phone. "Security to gate K12. I have 2 disruptive passengers refusing to vacate the boarding area. Yes. Possible fraud. They're aggressive." She slammed the phone down and looked at the twins with a triumphant gleam in her eyes. "You're done. I've just cancelled your reservations. I'm offloading you right now." Her fingers flew across the keyboard. Click, clack, click. She pulled up the manifest. She saw the names. Sterling, Caleb, and Sterling, Joshua. She hit the offload command. A warning box popped up on her screen. It was red, unusual. Usually, it just asked for confirmation. This box had a code she had never seen before. Error 99. Restricted PNR. Action denied. Clearance level 5 required. Patricia frowned. She hit enter again. Action denied. "Stupid system," she muttered, banging on the escape key. "The computer is freezing up because of your fraudulent tickets." "It's not freezing because they're fraudulent, Patricia," Caleb said. He wasn't looking at her anymore. He was looking at his Apple Watch. "It's freezing because you don't have the clearance to delete us." Patricia laughed, a harsh, barking sound. "Clearance? I'm the lead gate agent. I run this flight. I can delete the pilot if I want to." "Try it," Joshua challenged. "Try to delete us again." Patricia gritted her teeth. She wasn't going to let these 2 punks humiliate her. She bypassed the standard command and went into the back-end command line, a trick she learned 20 years ago to dump overbooked passengers. She typed in the manual override code. "Override authorized." She grinned. "Gotcha." She hit delete. Suddenly, the screen didn't just flash an error. It went black. Not just her screen. The screen above the gate displaying the flight information flickered and died. The computer at the neighboring podium shut down. A collective gasp went through the waiting area. "What did you do?" Patricia shrieked, looking at the twins. "You hacked the system. I knew it. You're cyber terrorists." Caleb sighed and adjusted his backpack. "We didn't hack anything. You just triggered a failsafe." "Security!" Patricia screamed, waving frantically as 2 TSA officers and a Chicago police officer came jogging down the concourse. "Arrest them. They crashed my computer. They're attacking the airline." The police officer, a burly man named Officer Miller, put his hand on his holster. "Back up, folks. Everyone back up." He looked at the twins. "Gentlemen, put your bags on the ground. Hands where I can see them." "Officer, this is a misunderstanding," Joshua said calmly, raising his hands. "She refused us boarding based on our appearance, and when she tried to illegally delete our tickets, she tripped a corporate lockout." "Liar!" Patricia pointed a shaking finger at them. "They are thugs. They have fake tickets. Look at them. Do they look like they own a Swiss bank account?" Officer Miller looked at the twins. He saw the expensive clothes, but he also saw 2 large black men in a high-stress environment. His bias kicked in, just as Patricia's had. "Turn around," Miller ordered, unclipping his handcuffs. "You're being detained for interfering with flight operations." "You are making a mistake," Caleb said, his voice steady but cold as ice. "A very expensive mistake." "Cuff 'em," Patricia cheered, crossing her arms smugly. "And ban them for life. I want them on the no-fly list." As the cold steel of the handcuffs clicked onto Caleb's wrists, a loud ping echoed from the pocket of his hoodie. Then another ping from Joshua's pocket. Then, simultaneously, every phone in the gate area buzzed. A woman in the crowd looked at her phone and gasped. "Oh my God!" "What?" someone asked. "Look at the news," the woman said, holding up her phone. "It's a push notification from the Wall Street Journal." Patricia ignored them. She was watching the twins get handled. "Serves you right," she sneered. "Officer," Caleb said, turning his head as he was pushed against the wall. "Before you take us away, you might want to ask that lady to look at her screen again. It should be rebooting now with a message." Patricia looked back at her terminal. The black screen hummed to life, but it didn't show the AeroVantage logo. It showed a simple, stark white text on a blue background. "System lockdown initiated." Authority. "Sterling Global Holdings. Asset liquidation imminent. All operations grounded." Patricia stared at the words. She blinked. "Sterling? Global?" She looked at the manifest she had printed out earlier, lying on the counter. "Passenger. Sterling Caleb. Passenger. Sterling Joshua." Her blood ran cold. She looked up at the twins, who were currently being patted down by the police. Joshua caught her eye. He didn't look angry anymore. He looked disappointed. "Officer Miller," Joshua said. "Check the news, or ask the lady to read that notification out loud." The woman with the blue hair stepped forward, holding her phone up. It says, "AeroVantage Airlines halts all global operations immediately as new owners, Sterling Global, discover massive internal fraud and compliance violations. The entire fleet is grounded effective this minute." Officer Miller froze. He looked at the handcuffs on Caleb's wrists. He looked at the news alert on the bystander's phone. Then he looked at Caleb. "Sterling?" Miller asked. "My father is David Sterling," Caleb said quietly. "He bought this airline at 9 a.m. this morning. We were sent here to evaluate the customer service and decide if the Chicago hub was worth saving." Caleb looked at Patricia, whose face had gone the color of old milk. "I think," Caleb whispered, "we've made our decision." Officer Miller stared at the handcuffs. The metal felt heavy and cold in his hands, suddenly transformed from a tool of justice into a liability that could cost him his pension. He looked at the calm, almost bored expression on Caleb Sterling's face. "Uncuff him," Joshua said. It wasn't a request. It was an instruction, delivered with the casual authority of a man who owned the building they were standing in. Miller fumbled for his key. His hands were shaking slightly. I didn't know. I was just responding to a disturbance call." "You were responding to a bias," Caleb corrected, rubbing his wrists as the cuffs clicked off. He didn't thank the officer. He simply adjusted his hoodie sleeves. "But you're just the muscle. She's the brain." All eyes turned to Patricia. She was backed against the podium, clutching the counter like it was the railing of the Titanic. Her face had gone from a flush of anger to a ghostly, sickly white. The terminal around them was descending into madness. The pinging of phones hadn't stopped. It was a cascade of digital bad news. "My flight to Denver just got cancelled," a man in a cowboy hat shouted. "Mine too. Everything is red on the board. The app isn't working. It just says service suspended." The gate area, which had been a tense theater for Patricia's power trip, was now a riot of confusion. People were rushing the desk, ignoring the queue lines Patricia had so carefully enforced. "What's going on?" Mr. Henderson, the man in the cheap suit whom Patricia had let board, came storming back up the jet bridge. He looked furious. "The pilot just told us to get off the plane. He said the flight plan has been revoked." Patricia stammered, her voice cracking. I don't... It's a glitch. It has to be a glitch." She looked at the twins, desperate for it to be a prank. "You did this. You hacked it. Tell them you hacked it." Joshua stepped forward, bypassing the velvet rope. He walked right up to the podium, invading her personal space. He placed his phone on the counter. The screen showed a live CNBC broadcast. The headline ticker read, "Breaking. Sterling Global acquires Aerovantage. Fleet grounded pending audit." "Patricia," Joshua said, his voice smooth and dangerous, "do you know what asset liquidation means?" She shook her head, unable to speak. "It means we're selling it all," Joshua explained, as if teaching a child. "The planes, the slots, the peanuts. We bought this airline at 9 a.m. because it was failing. Our analysts said the brand was toxic. They said the staff were undertrained and hostile. My brother and we're the optimists. We told our father, no, let's fly it one last time. Let's see if there's heart left in the company. Let's see how they treat 2 young men in hoodies." Caleb stepped up beside him. "And you, Patricia, were the test." "I followed protocol," Patricia whispered, tears welling up in her eyes. Not tears of remorse, but tears of terror. "I was protecting the first-class cabin. You didn't look like we belonged," Caleb finished for her. "That's the problem with your airline, Patricia. You think luxury means exclusion. We think luxury means service, and your service is trash." Suddenly, the door to the jet bridge burst open again. The captain of Flight 404, Captain Richard O'Malley, stormed out. He was a tall man with silver hair and 4 stripes on his shoulders, usually the picture of composure. Now, he looked ready to kill. "Gable!" the captain roared. "What is happening? Dispatch just told me the fuel trucks are turning around. They're siphoning the tanks. Who authorized a fleet-wide grounding?" Patricia pointed a trembling finger at the twins. "Them. They claim they own the airline." Captain O'Malley looked at the 2 young men. He looked at their clothes. He frowned. "Who are you?" "I'm Joshua Sterling. This is Caleb Sterling." Joshua extended a hand. O'Malley froze. He knew the name. Every pilot in the industry knew the name Sterling. They were the venture capitalists who had turned around 3 failing logistics companies in the last decade. They were known as the Butchers in the boardroom because they cut the fat without mercy. O'Malley didn't shake the hand. He took off his hat. "Sterling Global? The acquisition rumors were true?" "It's not a rumor anymore, Captain," Caleb said. "We closed the deal this morning. But we put a clause in the contract, a culture audit clause. If we encountered significant resistance or discriminatory practices during our incognito inspection, we had the right to trigger an immediate, hard stop to restructure the entire workforce. O'Malley looked at Patricia. He looked at the chaos in the terminal. He connected the dots. "Patricia," O'Malley said, his voice low and horrified. "What did you do to them?" I asked for ID. They were blocking the lane." Patricia shrieked, her defense crumbling. "They looked suspicious." "She tried to have us arrested for holding valid tickets," Caleb said simply. "She called us fraudsters. She humiliated us. And then she tried to manually delete our existence from the flight manifest." O'Malley closed his eyes and rubbed his temples. "You tried to offload the owners of the company?" "I didn't know," Patricia screamed. "How was I supposed to know?" "That's the point," Joshua said, leaning in close. "You treat everyone with respect because you never know who you're talking to. But you treat people based on shoes and skin color." The airport's PA system chimed. It wasn't the usual robotic voice. It was a live person, sounding breathless. "Attention all passengers in Terminal 3. This is the Airport Authority. All AeroVantage operations have been suspended indefinitely by the parent company. Please do not approach the counters. We are coordinating with local police to evacuate the terminal." Evacuate. The word hung in the air like smoke. "You shut down the terminal?" Patricia gasped. "Because I was rude?" "No," Caleb said, turning his back on her. "We shut it down because you are a symptom of a disease. And we don't treat diseases with band-aids. We use chemotherapy." Caleb looked at Officer Miller. "Officer, I'd like to file a report, false imprisonment, and harassment." Miller swallowed hard. "Yes, sir. We can do that down at the precinct, or I can take a statement here." "Not here," Joshua said, looking around the mob of angry passengers who were now filming everything. "Take us to the Red Carpet Club, the VIP lounge. We need to set up a command center." He looked back at Patricia. "And bring her," Joshua added. "She's coming with us." "Where?" Patricia asked, her voice trembling. "To her performance review," Caleb said. The AeroVantage Red Carpet Club was usually a sanctuary of quiet jazz and cheap Chardonnay. Now it was a war room. The twins had commandeered the main conference room, a glass-walled enclosure in the center of the lounge that offered a panoramic view of the grounded aircraft outside. The tarmac was a graveyard of silent metal. Baggage carts were abandoned. Jet bridges were retracted. It was an eerie stillness that cost millions of dollars by the minute. Caleb and Joshua sat at the head of the long mahogany table. They had finally taken off their hoodies, revealing simple black t-shirts that highlighted their athletic builds. They looked less like street kids now, and more like the tech moguls they were. Patricia sat at the opposite end of the table. She was flanked by Officer Miller and Captain O'Malley. She had never been in this room before. This room was for the high rollers she worshipped from afar. Now that she was inside, she felt small. The door opened, and a man burst in, sweating profusely. It was Marcus Thorne, the station manager for O'Hare. He was a fat man in a tight suit, wiping his forehead with a handkerchief. "Mr. Sterling! Mr. Sterling!" Thorne gasped, rushing to the table. "I came as soon as I got the alert. Please, there must be a misunderstanding. A total ground stop. The losses. The shareholders." "We are the shareholders, Marcus," Caleb said calmly, not looking up from his laptop. "Sit down." Thorne collapsed into a chair next to Patricia. He shot her a venomous look. "What did you do, Gable?" Patricia started, but her voice failed her. "Let's review the footage," Joshua said. He tapped a key on his laptop. The large screen on the wall flickered to life. It showed the security camera feed from Gate K-12. The angle was high, but the audio was crystal clear. AeroVantage recorded all gate interactions for liability purposes, a policy that was about to backfire spectacularly. They watched in silence. They watched Patricia sneer. They heard her tone dripping with condescension. I doubt that. Step out of the line. Matching our description. Thorne winced as he watched. He covered his face with his hands when Patricia threatened to call security. When the video ended, the silence in the room was heavier than the planes outside. "Standard procedure, Marcus?" Caleb asked, spinning his chair to face the station manager. Thorne stammered. "No, absolutely not. This is a rogue employee, a bad apple. We value diversity and inclusion at AeroVantage." "Do you?" Joshua asked. He slid a folder across the table. It wasn't digital. It was a physical file, thick with papers. "We've been investigating this airline for 6 months before we bought it," Joshua said. "We didn't just walk up to the gate today for fun. We sent in undercover evaluators. Black, Hispanic, Asian, even white passengers dressed in construction gear." Caleb leaned forward. "This folder contains 42 complaints filed against Patricia Gable in the last 3 years. 42. Do you know what the response from management was?" Thorne went pale. Joshua opened the folder and read from a memo. "Agent Gable is efficient at keeping the priority lane clear of non-conforming passengers. Her methods are blunt, but she protects the brand image. No disciplinary action required." Joshua looked up. Signed by Marcus Thorne. The room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Patricia looked at her boss. He had defended her? She thought she was just doing her job, but hearing it read out loud, non-conforming passengers, it sounded monstrous. I was talking about dress codes," Thorne stammered. "We have standards." "Your standard is racism wrapped in a policy manual," Caleb said. "You emboldened her. You gave her a badge and told her to keep the riffraff out. And today, the riffraff bought your building." Patricia spoke up, her voice small and trembling. "I have a pension. I have 30 years. "You have nothing," Caleb said, his voice hard. "But I'm not going to fire you yet." Patricia blinked. You're not?" "No," Caleb said. "Firing you is too easy. You go home. You collect unemployment. You tell your friends you were a victim of woke billionaires." "No." Joshua stood up and walked to the glass wall, looking out at the grounded planes. "We're going to sue you." Patricia's jaw dropped. "Sue me?" "Civil liability," Joshua said, turning around. "Interference with business operations, defamation, false imprisonment, and the cost of grounding this fleet." He pointed out the window. "Every minute those planes sit there, it costs us about $50,000. We've been here for 30 minutes. That's $1.5 million. He looked at Patricia. "We're going to attach that debt to your name. We're going to take your house, your car, your pension, and your future earnings." Patricia started to hyperventilate. "You can't do that. I'm just an employee." "You acted outside the scope of your employment," Caleb countered legally. "Discrimination and illegal detention are not in your job description. Therefore, the company isn't liable for your actions. You are." It was a stretch legally, and they knew it. But they wanted her to feel the weight of the world she had tried to crush. They wanted her to feel the powerlessness she inflicted on others. Thorne slammed his hand on the table. "Now wait a minute. You can't destroy my staff like this. If you go after her, you go after the union." "The union?" Caleb laughed. "Marcus, check your email." Thorne pulled out his phone. His face went grey. "We just dissolved the operating entity of AeroVantage," Caleb said. "We declared Chapter 11 bankruptcy for the subsidiary 5 minutes ago. The union contracts are currently void pending renegotiation. Everyone in this terminal is technically unemployed as of right now. Caleb stood up and buttoned his blazer, which he had pulled on over his t-shirt. "We are burning this field to plant something new," Caleb said, "and the first thing we're removing are the weeds." He looked at Officer Miller. "Officer, you can escort Ms. Gable out of the secure area. Her badge has been deactivated. If she tries to re-enter, arrest her for trespassing." Patricia stood up, her legs wobbly. She looked at the gate, at the uniform she had worn for 3 decades. "But where do I go? How do I get home?" "You can take the bus," Joshua said cold-heartedly. "Zone 4. It hasn't been called yet, but if you wait, maybe they'll let you on. If you fit the profile." Patricia began to sob. It was a broken, ugly sound. She reached out to Thorne. "Marcus, please!" Thorne turned his back on her. "Get away from me. You caused this." As Officer Miller guided a weeping Patricia out of the VIP lounge, the twins didn't smile. They didn't high-five. They just looked tired. "Part 1 is done," Caleb said to Joshua. "Now we have to deal with the 4,000 angry passengers downstairs." "And the press," Joshua added, nodding toward the TVs which were now showing live helicopter footage of the airport traffic jam. "But first," Caleb said, looking at the captain who was still standing there, stunned silent. "Captain O'Malley?" "Yes, sir?" O'Malley straightened up. "You defended her out there, but then you asked the right questions," Caleb said. "You didn't assume we were criminals. You asked who we were." "I try to follow the facts, sir," O'Malley said. "Good," Joshua said, "because you're the new chief of operations, if you want the job." O'Malley looked at Thorne, who was sweating through his suit. He looked at the twins. "I'll take it," O'Malley said. "Great," Caleb said. "Then your first job is to help us figure out which one of these passengers deserves to get home tonight. Because we're not flying everyone. We're only flying the people who treated the staff with respect." "How do we know that?" O'Malley asked. Joshua smiled, a genuine smile this time, because while Patricia was busy harassing us, we had our AI monitoring the social media feeds and the gate cameras of every passenger in the terminal. We know who shouted at the agents, we know who kicked the seats, and we know who helped the old lady with her bag. "The Ark is leaving," Caleb said, "and only the good ones are getting on board." But just as they were about to leave the lounge, the glass door didn't open. A man in a dark trench coat stood there. He wasn't airport security. He wasn't police. He held up a badge that wasn't metallic. It was laminated ID on a lanyard. FAA, Federal Investigator. "Not so fast, gentlemen," the man said, stepping into the room. "You can't just ground a national carrier and declare bankruptcy in an afternoon without the feds getting involved. You two aren't going anywhere." Caleb and Joshua exchanged a look. The game had just leveled up. The man in the trench coat didn't look like a bureaucrat. He looked like a shark in human skin. He walked into the red carpet club with a stride that suggested he owned the air the twins were breathing. "Special Agent Vance. Wait. No. Special Agent Kalen," the man corrected himself, flashing a wolfish grin. "Federal Aviation Administration, Office of Whistleblower Protection and Corporate Oversight." Joshua didn't blink. "You got here fast, Agent Kalen. We only grounded the fleet 45 minutes ago." "I was already here," Kalen said, pulling out a chair and sitting down uninvited. He placed a heavy tablet on the table. "I've been watching AeroVantage for 6 months, just like you, except I didn't have the cash to buy it. I was building a case to bury it." He tapped the screen, and a holographic projection of a flight path appeared. It was erratic, dangerous. "You boys think you just bought a failing airline with bad customer service," Kalen said, his voice lowering to a conspiratorial whisper. But you actually bought a laundering machine. Caleb frowned. We did due diligence. The books showed losses, not laundering. The books you saw were cooked, Kalen said. He swiped the screen. AeroVantage wasn't just delaying flights to save fuel. They were grounding planes to offload illicit cargo in non-secure hangars. That maintenance delay in Miami last week, that was 50 kilos of unmanifested pharmaceuticals moving through the cargo hold. Marcus Thorne, the sweating station manager, tried to stand up. This is preposterous. I won't listen to— Sit down, Marcus, Kalen snapped, not even looking at him, or I'll play the recording of you authorizing the special handling of Crate 404 2 nights ago. Thorne collapsed back into his chair, looking like he might vomit. Here's the situation, Kalen said, looking at the twins. You grounded the fleet. That's good. It stopped the shipment scheduled for tonight. But the people moving this product, they aren't happy, and they aren't just angry passengers tweeting at you. Joshua leaned forward. Are you saying we're in danger? I'm saying you just locked the doors on a moving vehicle driven by the cartel, Kalen said. And right now, there are 3 men in the baggage handling area who aren't employees. They're looking for a way to override your lockdown and get one specific plane, Flight 88 to Bogota, off the ground. Caleb looked at Captain O'Malley. Flight 88, is it at a gate? It's at gate K5, O'Malley said, checking his phone. Boarding was halfway done when you pulled the plug. We need to go there, Caleb said, standing up. No, Kalen said, blocking him. You need to stay here. If they know the new owners are in the building, you become leverage. I have a team moving in. But I need you to keep the system locked down. Do not reboot. Do not let anyone talk you into restoring power for safety. Suddenly, the lights in the lounge flickered. The emergency sirens began to wail. Whoop whoop, whoop whoop. A voice came over the emergency PA. Fire reported in the main server room. Evacuating Terminal 3 immediately. This is not a drill. They started a fire, Joshua realized, to force a hard reset of the servers. If the power cuts, the mag locks on the cargo doors open automatically. Smart, Kalen muttered. They want their package back. We can't let them have it, Caleb said. He looked at Joshua. If they get that cargo out, they disappear, and we're left holding the bag for a drug-running airline. We need to secure the server room, Joshua said. It's in the basement, Thorne squeaked. Sub-level 2, but you can't go down there. The fire suppression system sucks the oxygen out. We have about 3 minutes before the halon gas triggers, Caleb said, checking his watch. Kalen, you handle the baggage area. O'Malley, keep the passengers calm. Joshua and I are going to the basement. You're CEOs, not action heroes, Kalen shouted as the twins sprinted for the door. We're not just CEOs, Caleb shouted back. We're from the south side. We know how to run. The stairwell to the basement was cool and smelled of damp concrete. The emergency lights bathed everything in a pulsing red glow. Caleb and Joshua moved fast, their expensive sneakers squeaking on the linoleum. They reached the heavy steel door marked Server Farm. Authorized personnel only. The door was slightly ajar. The lock had been drilled out. Someone's already inside, Joshua whispered, pulling his brother back against the wall. Caleb peeked around the frame. Inside, rows of black server racks hummed loudly. In the center of the room, 2 men in maintenance uniforms were working frantically at the main console. They weren't fighting a fire. There was no fire. They had pulled the fire alarm to clear the building. They were hacking the mainframe. Bypass the firewall, one man grunted. The boss wants the cargo hold on Flight 88 open in 2 minutes. I'm trying. This new encryption is insane. It's sterling global tech. It adapts. The other man cursed. Caleb looked at Joshua. They didn't have weapons. They had laptops and righteous indignation. "Hey!" Caleb yelled, stepping into the room. "Tech support is here." The two men spun around. One of them, a guy with a scar running through his eyebrow, pulled a knife. "Wrong room, kids. Get lost." "We own the room," Joshua said, stepping up beside Caleb. "And you're violating the terms of service." The scarred man lunged. It happened fast. Growing up, the twins hadn't just studied finance. Their father, knowing the targets on their backs, had put them in Krav Maga classes since they were 12. As the knife came down, Caleb sidestepped, grabbed the man's wrist, and used the momentum to slam him into a server rack. The metal casing dented with a loud clang, and the man crumpled. The second hacker abandoned the console and charged at Joshua. He threw a wild punch. Joshua ducked, weaving under the blow, and delivered a sharp knee to the man's solar plexus. The hacker doubled over, gasping for air. Joshua followed up with a shove that sent him tumbling over a pile of cables. "Stay down!" Joshua ordered. But the first man, Scarface, was getting up. He looked groggy but angry. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a radio. "Boss, we got interference! 2 guys in the server room!" A crackly voice responded. "Finish them. I'm coming down." "That didn't sound good," Caleb said, looking at the door. "We need to lock this system down permanently," Joshua said. He rushed to the console. The screen was flashing, "System override attempted." "They installed a worm," Joshua said, his fingers flying across the keyboard. "It's trying to eat through the lockdown protocols. If I stop it, I might brick the whole system. The airline will never fly again." "Do it," Caleb said, watching the door. "Better dead than dirty." Joshua hit the command. "Purge all data." "Are you sure?" Joshua hesitated. "This deletes passenger records, flight histories, everything. It resets the company to 0. "It's the only way to kill the back door they're using," Caleb said. Footsteps thundered down the hallway. Heavy boots. "Do it, Josh!" Joshua hit enter. The screens in the room went blue, then white, then black. The hum of the servers died down to a whisper. The lights on the racks went out. Silence filled the room. "You killed it," Caleb breathed. "You killed the airline." The door burst open. It wasn't the cartel boss. It was Patricia Gable. She stood there, panting, holding a heavy fire extinguisher. Behind her was Officer Miller. "Patricia?" Caleb asked, confused. "I saw them," Patricia yelled, pointing at the 2 groggy men on the floor. "I saw them sneak down here when I was being escorted out. They didn't have badges." For a moment, nobody moved. Patricia looked at the twins, then at the men she had just identified. I wanted to tell someone," she stammered. "I thought, maybe if I helped." "You came back to help us?" Joshua asked, skeptical. "I came back to save my job," she admitted honestly. "If the airport burns down, there's no airline to work for." Officer Miller stepped past her, gun drawn. "Police, don't move!" He trained his weapon on the 2 hackers who were trying to crawl away. "Good timing, Miller," Caleb said, leaning against a dead server rack. "Ms. Gable flagged me down," Miller said, handcuffing the hackers. She was screaming about unauthorized personnel. For once, her suspicion was actually useful. Patricia stood awkwardly in the doorway. Did I do good?" Caleb looked at the black screens. He looked at the woman who had humiliated him an hour ago. She was petty, she was prejudiced, and she was selfish. But she had also just led the police to the actual criminals. "You did okay, Patricia," Caleb said. "But you're still fired." Patricia's shoulders slumped. "I know. However," Joshua added, looking at the dead console, "we're going to need a lot of manual data entry to rebuild this database. Temporary contractor work. Minimum wage. No benefits." Patricia looked up. "I'll take it." We'll see, Caleb said. Suddenly, Kalen's voice came over the intercom system, which was apparently on a separate circuit. Gentlemen, we secured the cargo hold. You can come up now, and bring the maintenance crew with you. We have a lot to talk about. The twins walked out of the basement, past a humbled Patricia, leaving the ruins of the old Aerovantage behind them in the dark. The sun was beginning to rise over O'Hare International Airport, casting long, golden shadows across the tarmac, where dozens of Aerovantage planes sat motionless, like sleeping giants. But inside Terminal 3, nobody had slept. The Red Carpet Club had been transformed from a VIP lounge into a makeshift courtroom and press center. The glass walls, which usually offered privacy, now served as a fishbowl for the hundreds of passengers gathered outside, watching the drama unfold. Caleb and Joshua stood on a small riser near the entrance. They looked exhausted. Their hoodies were tied around their waists, their t-shirts rumpled, but their eyes were sharp. Next to them stood Special Agent Kalen, looking fresh as a daisy, and Captain O'Malley, who had assumed command of the terminal's logistics. But the real attention was on the three people seated in chairs facing the crowd: Marcus Thorne, the stationed manager, Patricia Gable, the disgraced gate agent, and, shockingly, Mr. Henderson, the rude passenger from the beginning of the ordeal. "Why am I here?" Henderson sputtered, adjusting his cheap suit. "I was just a passenger. I have rights." "You're here, Mr. Henderson," Joshua said, his voice amplified by a microphone, "because when we ran the passenger manifest through the federal database during the lockdown, your name flagged." The crowd murmured. Henderson went pale. "You aren't just a rude businessman," Caleb continued, holding up a tablet. "You're a courier. Agent Kalen?" Kalen stepped forward. "Harold Henderson, we found the validation keys for the cargo hold in your briefcase. You weren't just bypassing the line because you felt entitled. You were bypassing it because you needed to get on Flight 88 to unlock the shipment from the inside." Two police officers stepped forward and hauled Henderson out of his chair. As the handcuffs clicked, the crowd outside the glass cheered. The man who had sneered at the twins for their dress code was currently being led away for international smuggling. "Now," Caleb said, turning his gaze to Marcus Thorne. "Mr. Thorne." Thorne was sweating so profusely his collar was soaked. I didn't know about the drugs. I swear, I just managed the staff." "That's true," Joshua conceded. "We don't have evidence linking you to the cartel. But we found something else in your office safe." Joshua projected a document onto the large screen behind them. It was a payroll spreadsheet. "You've been skimming," Joshua said, "for 5 years. You've been cutting the overtime pay of your gate agents and maintenance crews, funneling the difference into a shell company called Thorne Logistics. You stole $2 million from the very people you claimed to lead." A gasp went through the room. Patricia looked up, shock written all over her face. "Marcus, but you told us corporate cut our bonuses." "I lied," Thorne screamed, cracking under the pressure. "I had to. The airline was sinking. I was taking my share before it went under." "And that," Caleb said coldly, "is why you let people like Patricia bully passengers. You created a culture of misery, so everyone would be too angry and distracted to notice you were robbing them blind." Thorne wept as the FBI agents collected him. He didn't walk out with dignity. He was dragged out, his expensive Italian loafers scuffing against the carpet. Finally, the room fell silent. Only Patricia remained in the defendant's chair. She looked small, stripped of her podium, her computer, and her authority. She was just a middle-aged woman in a polyester uniform that suddenly felt like a prison suit. Caleb walked down from the riser and stood in front of her. He didn't tower over her. He crouched down so they were eye level. And then there's you, Patricia, Caleb said softly. I didn't steal, Patricia whispered, tears streaming down her face. And I didn't smuggle drugs. I just wanted to keep my line moving. You profiled us, Caleb said. You saw 2 black men and decided we were a threat. You decided we didn't belong in your world. And because of that, you almost let a smuggler onto a plane and protected a boss who was stealing your retirement fund. I know, she sobbed. I was wrong. I was so wrong. Please, just fire me. Let me go home. The crowd outside the glass pressed closer. Phones were recording every second. The world was waiting to see what the hard karma would be. Joshua stepped up beside his brother. We aren't going to fire you, Patricia. We discussed it. If we fire you, you disappear. You become a victim in your own mind. You'll go on Facebook and complain about how you were treated unfairly. Then what? She asked, trembling. We're offering you a choice, Joshua said. Option A. We press charges for the illegal detention and harassment. With the viral video and the police report, you're looking at maybe 6 months of jail time and a permanent record. You'll never work in an airport again. Patricia covered her mouth, horrified. Or option B, Caleb said. Probationary rehiring. Patricia blinked. You'd hire me back? Not as a gate agent, Caleb corrected quickly. You don't have the temperament for leadership yet. You start at the bottom, the very bottom. He handed her a new badge. It wasn't the gold-trimmed lead agent badge. It was a plain grey plastic card. Patricia Gable, junior custodial trainee. You will clean the planes, Caleb said. You will scrub the toilets in economy. You will pick up the trash left by the passengers you used to look down on. And you will do it for minimum wage. And, Joshua added, you will attend mandatory bias training 3 times a week, unpaid. Patricia looked at the grey badge. It was humiliating. It was a demotion so severe it felt like a slap in the face. But it was a job, and it was freedom from a jail cell. Why? She asked, her voice shaking. Why give me a chance? Because, Caleb said, standing up and addressing the crowd, Sterling Air isn't about cancelling people. It's about fixing them. You broke the trust of every passenger. Now, you're going to scrub that trust back into existence, 1 seat at a time. Patricia took the badge. She stood up, wiped her eyes, and nodded. I'll do it. Good, Joshua said. Grab a mop. Flight 88 needs to be cleaned. We're reboarding in 2 hours. As Patricia walked out of the VIP lounge, not through the priority lane, but through the service exit, the crowd didn't boo. They didn't cheer. They just watched. It was the heavy silence of justice being served, cold, hard, and undeniable. 6 months later, the winter snow had melted in Chicago, replaced by the bright, hopeful sun of early summer. Terminal 3 looked different. The drab grey carpets were gone, replaced by sleek, modern flooring. The lighting was warmer. But the biggest change was the signage. Everywhere you looked, the silver and blue logo of Sterling Air gleamed. Underneath the logo was the company's new slogan, Respect at every altitude. Caleb and Joshua Sterling walked through the automatic doors of departure level. They were dressed impeccably, not in suits, but in their signature style, high-end streetwear. Caleb wore a crisp white hoodie under a blazer. Joshua wore a vintage bomber jacket. They weren't stopped by security. They weren't questioned. As they walked through the terminal, employees nodded respectfully. Morning, Mr. Sterling. Morning, Mr. Sterling. They reached Gate K-12, the scene of the crime. The podium was new. The computer systems were state-of-the-art. Standing behind the counter was a young man with tattoos on his arms and a bright smile. He was checking in an elderly couple who were struggling with their digital tickets. "Take your time, folks," the agent said patiently. "We've got plenty of time. Let me help you with that brightness setting." Caleb smiled. "Good hire, O'Malley." Captain O'Malley, now the VP of Operations, walked up behind them, holding 2 coffees. "He is. Former barista. Great with people. Doesn't care if you're wearing a tuxedo or a trash bag. He treats you the same." "That's the brand," Joshua said, taking a coffee. "Speaking of the brand," O'Malley said, gesturing toward the window. "Your ride is here." Outside, a gleaming Boeing 787 Dreamliner was pulling up to the gate. It was painted in the new sterling livery, jet black with silver wings. It was the flagship of the fleet. "We have a full flight to Zurich," O'Malley said. "Sold out. First class is full. Economy is full. Profits are up 200% since the rebranding." "And the staff morale?" Caleb asked. "Highest in the industry," O'Malley reported. "Since we started the profit-sharing program you authorized, everyone feels like they own a piece of the plane. Nobody steals overtime anymore because they know they'll get a dividend check at Christmas." "Good," Joshua said. "And how is our special project?" O'Malley pointed toward the jet bridge. "See for yourself." Walking up the jet bridge, having just finished the pre-flight cleaning, was Patricia. She looked different. She had lost weight. Her hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail, no longer the stiff, sprayed helmet of the past. She wore a grey jumpsuit with the custodial patch on the shoulder. She looked tired, but she didn't look miserable. She saw the twins and stopped. For a moment, the old fear flickered in her eyes, but she pushed it down. "Mr. Sterling, she said, nodding to each of them. "Patricia," Caleb said. "How was the turnaround?" "Efficient," she said. "We found a wallet in seat 34B, turned it into lost and found immediately, and I helped a mother with a stroller get down the ramp." "That's not in your job description," Joshua noted. "I know," Patricia said, a faint smile touching her lips. "But she looked like she needed a hand, and I remember what it feels like to be blocked." The twins looked at each other. The rehabilitation was working. The arrogance had been scrubbed away, replaced by the humility of hard labor. "We have an opening, Patricia," Caleb said. Patricia froze. "An opening." "Customer service desk. Baggage claim," Joshua said. "It's not the gate. You don't have power over who flies, but you help people find their lost things. It requires patience and empathy. O'Malley thinks you are ready to get out of the jumpsuit." Patricia looked down at her scrubbing gloves. She looked at the grey badge. Then she looked at the twins. I think I'd like that," she said softly. "Thank you." "Don't thank us," Caleb said, walking past her toward the plane. "Thank the work you did." As the twins boarded the plane, they turned left into the first-class cabin. They didn't take seat 1A this time. They walked past the luxury suites. "Where are you going?" O'Malley asked. "Economy," Caleb said, tossing his backpack into an overhead bin in row 20. "We heard the service back here is excellent these days." "Besides," Joshua grinned, sitting in the middle seat next to a surprised teenager with headphones, "we need to make sure the peanuts are fresh." The plane took off, soaring over the Chicago skyline. Down below, the old world of exclusion and judgment was getting smaller and smaller. Up here, at 30,000 feet, the air was clear. Patricia stood at the window of the terminal, watching the black and silver plane disappear into the clouds. She touched her new assignment letter in her pocket. She took a deep breath, picked up her bucket, and walked toward the staff break room. She wasn't the queen of the terminal anymore. She was just a worker. But for the first time in 30 years, she felt like a human being. The karma hadn't destroyed her. It had saved her. And as for the Sterling twins, they were just getting started. Wow, what a ride! From being denied entry to buying the entire airline in less than an hour, Caleb and Joshua proved that the ultimate power move isn't shouting, it's ownership. Patricia learned the hard way that when you judge someone by their appearance, you might just be judging your future boss. If this story satisfied your craving for justice, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow. And don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss a story about karma hitting back hard. What would you have done if you were in the twins' shoes? Would you have fired Patricia immediately or given her a second chance like they did? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and remember, be kind, because you never know who you're talking to.